So the problem is a lot of people will be like, yes, Bernie's the man, of course, tax the billionaires. But it's like, all right, well, where's this money actually going? How are we going to fund all this? And that's the problem that I think people have is like, great ideas. Where's the math come into this, though?
So there's some very simple answers to that.
Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk went on Patrick Bet-David's Biz Bro podcast to go up against Patrick Bet-David, as well as Patrick Bet-David's co-host Adam Sosnick, to talk about economic inequality, social democracies, and Kyle Kulinski's view of how our systems should work. It's an incredibly important conversation, and so I wanted to share it on the channel. We're going to take a look at these clips from Patrick Bet-David's show, this heated debate between Kyle Kulinski and Adam Sosnick. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
What are you doing to get better? And if the answer is, I have a problem with that. I agree. I think that person needs to be held accountable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think the problem is we're having two separate conversations. I think there's one conversation about the system and how we address the system. Then there's a whole other conversation about at the individual level, how do you treat people? What values do you impart on them? And I think on the values front, on the individual front, we agree 100%. Because, you should focus, you should try to create a culture of hard work. You should try to create a culture of people showing up, being passionate about something, giving their all to something. It's just, in my view, it's just two separate conversations where you could also have a separate conversation about what do we do with the system? What do we do with the tax rates? What do we do with the living wage law? What do we do about unions? And so that's where our disconnect is coming from.
Well, if you want to go there, because I want to go to a different topic.
Yeah, I just want to kind of revisit how this whole conversation started, because obviously we're trying to find some common ground here. But going back to, I think what you stand for with the social democracy is, you ever seen that video where dozens of kids lined up for a race, and there's the coach being like, all right, take 2 steps forward if your parents are still married, and then kids take 2 steps forward. All right, take a step forward if you've graduated high school. Boom. And then you've seen this thing before. I don't know if you can pull that up, but basically it's an expose on however you were raised, or whatever the merits you had or the benefits you had, you're going to have a leg up in life.
Right.
So, all right. So essentially the message was a lot of the black kids or the Latino kids, or
poor kids, poor white kids, yeah.
Even poor white kids for that matter. This understanding how privilege works. Okay.
So, by the way, I just interject. I'm sorry. I hate the privilege discourse.
I totally agree. I'm with you on this. Yeah. But all these kids start taking a step forward. Okay, great. So your baseline is you want everybody to start at the same starting point and just have a fair starting point, no advantages for certain kids over the others. And you talk about healthcare, free college, student loans, credit cards. But isn't that kind of the antithesis of America? Because, hear me out, you're a byproduct of what your parents decide to do. So if your parents work hard, pay their bills.
Is that right?
I think it is right.
Really? So if my parents are a scoundrel drunk, then I'm just destined to be fucked, and that's fine? I'm not.
Why are you destined to be fucked? You can make a decision to actually clean up your act. You don't have to live because your parents fucked up. But if Pat basically spent his whole life reading books, working out, improving, raised his kids the right way, made millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, and Rob over here worked a 9 to 5, didn't read books, didn't improve, didn't pass down anything, knowledge, wealth to his kids, are you saying that Rob's kids should have the exact same starting point as Pat's kids? I think that's utterly unfair.
Okay. So first of all, you said this is, kind of the antithesis of America. I totally disagree with that, because when you look at civil rights history, that was the core of what they were trying to do. Hey, it's unfair that we have our boot on the neck of this entire class of people. They're, minorities, and they're treated unfairly. Let's just start treating them fairly. That was the core of that. And also, the New Deal. That was FDR coming in and saying, you know what? These, what he called economic royalists, have been fucking working people for far too long. The income and wealth inequality at the time was preposterous. It was called the robber baron era, because you had this top tiny sliver of the population that was making all the fucking money. Then you had these people who were working all day, every day with shit pay.
Industrial Revolution, aristocrats, fat cats, that whole thing.
All that stuff. And so
150 years ago.
So what I would argue is I think what I'm trying to do is harness the best of the American tradition. I think that social democracy is America at its best. That's what Social Security was, Medicare, Medicaid. These basic programs to say, I want people to have a fair shot. It's more, I think you're focusing more on the, let's like punish the Mitt Romney types or whatever, where my point is, no, let's help the people at the bottom to get to a reasonable floor.
Can I respond?
So before they get into the next part here, I just wanted to say I totally agree with what Kyle Kulinski is saying, where he says, so if the kid is born to an alcoholic father who's, doesn't work or whatever, then is that kid just destined to be poor? And Adam Sosnick says, no, he should be able to work his way out of that, which there is some truth to that. But here's an example that I would give that goes against what Adam Sosnick is saying. I hear people all the time say that if, there's a lot of parts of the United States, a lot of towns in the United States where there's not a lot of economic opportunity. And I hear people say all the time, well, if you can't find a good job there, just move. And that is easy to say if you have some kind of a support system. I worked in adult education for several years, where mainly I taught GED classes. And I had lots and lots of students who had no support system. In fact, they had family members who actively worked against them trying to improve themselves by getting their GED and then maybe going on to college. And if you had said to one of those people, well, if you can't find a job, just move. I remember I had one student who I came into class one morning, she was there, and I said, oh, how was your evening last night? And she said, oh, not that great. I missed the bus to go home, and I tried to get a ride with somebody. I couldn't find anybody to give me a ride. So I called for a cab, and the cab was $11, and she said I didn't have $11. She didn't have $11 in the bank even, that she could, use her debit card or whatever. I mean, think about being in a situation like that. So to say to somebody who has doesn't have $11 in the bank, hey, just move somewhere else and get a better job. Okay. When they move, they're going to have to get a moving truck. They're going to have to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, all of that in a new apartment. Not everybody can do that. So that's an example of a playing field which isn't level at all. And Kyle Kulinski is just saying, give those people some help so that they can be at the same level, not even of rich people, but just people that have some kind of a support system around them. They can borrow money from their parents or whatever to move to another place or to go to school. And I don't think the Adam Sosnick types ever think about that.
Sure.
100 years ago, FDR, Industrial Revolution, everything that Rockefellers, even up to civil rights, dude, I think your argument is completely fair. Meaning, like, of course,
right.
certain people were screwed. But it's been 50 plus years since then. At what point do we acknowledge, there's no systematic racism at this point. There's no the man keeping people down. Barack Obama became a president. Things have changed is what I'm saying. We're not back in the 1910s or 1870s or even the 1960s where people didn't get a fair shake. I think more than ever, people have the fairest shake they've ever had in this world. So at what point does that argument kind of get quelled? Meaning like, all right, we've addressed it. You're right, Kyle. 50 years ago, your argument held water like crazy. Does it still hold the same water today, though?
Yes, it does. You know what the number one cause of bankruptcy in America is?
Medical debt.
Correct.
Yeah.
You think that makes sense?
I don't, but
so let's just focus on that for a second. So we agree on that one. So that same spirit that we brought to the civil rights fight, to the New Deal fight, there's going to come a time when people look back at our era, let's say 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future, and they go, these fucking psychos were just sitting around when people were dying left and right and drowning up to their eyeballs in medical debt, and 45,000 people dying because they didn't have basic health care. There's going to come a time where we look at that with the same kind of scorn that we looked at segregation in the Jim Crow South. And that's what I'm just trying to.
I don't know if it'll be that level, but however, but the question is,
the question understand.
And Bernie did a great job of this. This is the question of, is healthcare a right or is it a privilege, right? And then should the government pay for everything? Every time the government gets involved in something, it's going to get f***ed. But then you have these monopolies, these biotech companies, big pharma that are making across state lines. This whole valid argument. But at the end of the day, who's paying for all this? Right? So you bring up the Scandinavian countries. You know how many people live in all of Scandinavia? All of Scandinavia. Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Greenland. How many people you think?
Yeah, it's not many. I know.
It's like 20 million people.
I understand that.
There's more people in Texas and in Florida and California. We got 20 to 40 million. So I don't know if that argument can extrapolate, because number one, each of those countries operate independently. So it's 5 million apiece versus 350 million here. I just don't know how it's going to work and who's going to pay for it all. Bernie Sanders, to my final point, if you were just going based on personality and rhetoric, people are like, this guy's awesome. He's crazy. He's wild. His crazy hair. He's got that pizzazz, charisma. But then when you got to actually do the math, it's like, how the is Bernie going to pay all this?
Okay.
Same with AOC and the New Green Deal. So the problem is a lot of people will be like, yes, Bernie's the man, of course, tax the billionaires. But it's like, all right, well, where's this money actually going? How are we going to fund all this? And that's the problem that I think people have is like, great ideas. Where's the math coming to this, though?
So there's some very simple answers to that. First of all, there was a report that just came out not too long ago in the Responsible Statecraft outlet. The Pentagon just failed its 5th audit in a row. They cannot account for, I believe the number was 59% of their funds.
We're talking defense.
We're talking trillions of dollars
missing.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Missing. Now, somebody might want to check, Dick Cheney's wallet, and somebody might want to check what was going on at Halliburton, what's going on with Kellogg, Brown and Root, and all these Raytheon, Boeing. We spent over $1 trillion. I think it's actually close to $2 trillion on this plane called the F-35-2. Which doesn't even fucking fly right to this day. Okay, so when you say, man, how are we going to pay for it? That's my first answer. If we cut our military budget, and I'm not exaggerating here, by 50%, we would still have the biggest military in the world by far, and it's not even close. Okay, so that's
how much is our military budget?
So there's the on the books answer, then there's the off the books answer.
Go on the books.
Yeah, the on the books answer is about $850 billion a year.
And how much? So do you know what percentage? I think 90% of our budget goes to
well, it's okay.
Social Security,
yes,
Medicare, Medicaid,
discretionary versus non-discretionary.
Entitlement programs. That's where all our money is going. All of it.
Well, again,
defense is like 5-10% at that. A lot of people want to say, all right, if you cut a couple $100 billion here, there's trillions and trillions and trillions going to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So that's where the entirety of our budget is going, and it's getting larger and larger as boomers, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every single day. Like, what do you want to do with those programs?
So, first of all, those programs, there's the discretionary portion of the budget and the non-discretionary portion of the budget, and those are viewed as kind of off the table. Nobody touches this. In other words, you don't need Washington to step in every year to re-up Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They're sort of off on their own, and I think it's a good thing that they're not addressed every single year because I don't think we'd ever fucking renew healthcare for old people.
I want to stop here. If you want to watch this entire debate, it's 2 hours long between Kyle Kulinski, Patrick Bet-David, Adam Sosnick. It's episode 219 on the PBD podcast. This was actually from 2 years ago, but I wanted to share this on the channel because I get tired of everything just being, hey, did you see what Donald Trump said today? Hey, what's the crazy thing that Donald Trump said today? And there's not many of these debates like this happening. So I brought up this old one because this, to me, is a very interesting conversation. Income inequality and healthcare costs and all of that. To address Adam Sosnick's, I agree with Kyle Kulinski on the defense budget. And it's even higher now. We're having a $1 trillion defense budget. And Donald Trump and the Republicans bragged about it being the first ever $1 trillion defense budget. And the people like Adam Sosnick and all the mainstream media people and all of that on the so-called liberal media channels never say, how are we going to pay for this $1 trillion defense budget? But if you talk about Medicare for all or some other government-funded, government-run healthcare system, a single-payer system, it's constantly, how do you pay for this? How do you pay for this? The argument that I hate, and I think is completely disingenuous and is wrong from a guy like Adam Sosnick, is, the Scandinavian countries are tiny. There's only 20 million people there. Each country only has 5 million people. To me, the response to that is, okay, if tiny countries like that can do it, then surely the United States, the most powerful, richest country in the world with it's probably higher now, but a couple of years ago, the GDP of the United States was $20 trillion. If Scandinavia with 20 million people can do it, it should be easy for us. Instead, it's always, we can't do because they're small countries, so we can't do that. And you hear the BS, they're a homogeneous society, so we can't do that. BS, total BS. The United States could do whatever they want, but we have super rich people and large corporations that control our population, our politicians, And that's why we can't have good things. We can't have the things that Kyle Kulinski is talking about that are standard in other industrialized countries. It's all a scam. It's all a con. But let me know what you think about all this. I went a little bit longer on this one than I really wanted to. Again, if you want to watch the whole thing, episode 219, PBD podcast. It's a very interesting conversation between Kyle Kulinski, Adam Sosnick, and Patrick Bet-David. Adam Sosnick is not dumb. I disagree with a lot of what he's saying, but he's not stupid. But let me know what you think about all of this. Do you agree with what Kyle Kulinski was saying here? Do you agree with Adam Sosnick? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.